Central to the author of Hebrews' argument that Christ's priesthood is superior to the Levitical priesthood is a figure mentioned in only 2 texts of the Hebrew Bible, Melchizedek. The first is Genesis 14:18-20, after Abraham returns from rescuing Lot from the 4 eastern kings who had kidnapped him while he dwelt in Sodom. Melchizedek, king of Salem, suddenly appears after Abraham's victory, even though his city was neither part of the attack nor attacked. The exact location of Salem is not known, but some scholars think it may have been Jerusalem, and the shortened form of its name here, Salem, highlighting a connection with shalom, the Hebrew word for peace, which is what Abraham and Melchizedek are celebrating in this text. In addition to ruling the city of Salem as king, Melchizedek is also identified as a priest of El Elyon, God Most High, who Abraham understands to be another name for Yahweh, the one true God who commanded him to leave his father's house and go to the land that he would show him. Melchizedek then appears to be a Canaanite king to whom the God of Abraham had also revealed himself. There are 2 indicators in the Genesis text that both Melchizedek and Abraham understood Melchizedek to be Abraham's superior. The first is that Melchizedek is the one who blesses Abraham. God had said that through Abraham, the whole world would be blessed. But here we have Abraham being blessed by someone else. And in the words of the author of Hebrews, it is beyond dispute that the inferior is blessed by the superior. Second, Abraham gives Melchizedek a tithe, a tenth of the spoils of his recent victory, which, when offered to a priest, is considered an offering to the Lord, whom he represents. Melchizedek then mysteriously vanishes from the pages of history, and no more is known about him, although he was the source of much speculation during the intertestamental period, probably due to his second reference in Psalm 110. Psalm 110 of David is often quoted by the writers of the New Testament because it was interpreted by Jesus himself as revealing that David expected a son who would be greater than him. In Psalm 110, verse 1, David writes, "The Lord," meaning Yahweh, "said to my Lord," meaning the superior son, interpreted widely by the rabbis to refer to the Messianic king, "sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool." In verse 4, a surprising thing is said about this greater son and king. "The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever, after the order of Melchizedek." The first readers of Psalm 110 must have been confused. The king? A priest? But God's covenants had promised that these 2 offices were tied to 2 totally different tribes, the kingship to Judah and the priesthood to Levi. And after the order of Melchizedek, the non-Israelite king mentioned in just 3 verses of Genesis. The author of Hebrews contributes to this discussion by presenting his understanding of just who Melchizedek was and why David referred to him in Psalm 110. He looks at Genesis 14 and he looks at Psalm 110, which he knows Jesus has interpreted as about himself. And he says, you know what? This Melchizedek guy, he looks a lot more like Jesus than you'd first think. In comparing Melchizedek with Christ, the author first looks at his name, Melech, the Hebrew word for king, and Zedek, coming from the same root as righteousness. King of righteousness. That kind of sounds like Jesus, who was without sin, holy, innocent, unstained, and separated from sinners. He was totally righteous. That's very interesting. Then the author looks at Melchizedek's position as king of Salem. Salem, remember, coming from the same root as the Hebrew word shalom, which means peace or well-being. King of peace. That also sounds like Jesus, who was called the Prince of Peace by the prophet Isaiah because he established peace between God and humanity amongst itself. The bringer of a greater rest than Joshua could ever offer. From there, the author sees a further parallel with Christ in that Melchizedek appears suddenly in Genesis without a genealogy, a device usually necessary to establish the significance of an individual in the Hebrew Bible. But Melchizedek is without father or mother or genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life. but resembling the Son of God, he continues a priest forever. How the author understands Melchizedek to resemble Christ is explained in two ways. One view sees Melchizedek as a historical king, whom the author knows is not actually eternal, but his appearance on the pages of Scripture without parents or children makes him appear so in a literary sense. But what was true of Melchizedek as simply a literary device is true of Christ in reality. Christ existed eternally with God before the incarnation and would continue as a priest forever. The second view identifies Melchizedek as the pre-incarnate Christ, and his interaction with Abraham is understood as a Christophany, a revelation of the Son before the 1st century AD. This view is based off of a belief that Melchizedek literally had no father or mother, and that the author is being literal when he says that the priest to whom Abraham tithed continues to live even now, owing to his indestructible life. Whichever view you take, the author has still used the Old Testament's two references to Melchizedek to prove, one, the superiority of Christ's priesthood over the Levitical based on the order of Melchizedek, and two, how Jesus of the tribe of Judah could not only be the king of Israel, but also become our great high priest.